Funny story, because in 1966, when I first enlisted in the United States Air Force, I enlisted because my parents were moving back to Puerto Rico, and I was in my first year of college, and I just didn't want to go back. I had a girlfriend here who's now been my wife for 35 years, and I just didn't want to go back to Puerto Rico at that time or to study. So my mother was afraid of leaving me in New York City, so I said, okay. I went, and since I didn't need their permission, I went and enlisted in the Air Force. As I said, in 1966, when the Vietnam War was really starting to escalate. From my perspective, my father having served during World War II and having laid kind of that foundation for me, becoming part of the military structure was not something that was necessarily foreign to me. But in answer to the question, the heart, I think, of your question, Latinos in general, minorities overall, have traditionally, well, certainly from Vietnam to the present, have made up a substantial portion of the armed forces, specifically the armed forces of the Army and the Marines, and to an extent, the Navy. They were branches of the service that seemed to somehow or other attract the minority community, the Latinos, and so the history that does precede many of today's servicemen and women, Latino servicemen and women, comes from the service that was rendered by many Puerto Ricanos in the Second World War, and the history that they provided, specifically, of course, the very famous 65th Infantry, 65 Infanteria, for the regiment from Puerto Rico that served so gallantly and valiantly during World War II. Because of the educational opportunities, the career opportunities that the military does offer, the opportunity perhaps for many Latinos to escape or get away from an environment that they may have grown up in that was not very productive, that was not very appealing, that did not offer too many positive options. I think that Puerto Ricanos and Latinos in general have looked at the military as an opportunity to get away, grow up in some instances, of course, and identify a career path that if they didn't choose that, they're not so sure where that other career path may have taken them. Well, what has changed basically is the numbers. I don't know that the growth that the Latino community has experienced in this country, most particularly over the last 15 years, was going to be as dramatic as it has been. The immigration numbers that we are experiencing are numbers that I think that corporate America was not prepared for to happen this quickly. Demographers would predict that perhaps by 2010, they anticipated that by that census, the Latino population would probably be the largest ethnic community in this country. Well, of course, it happened 10 years sooner than they expected. So when that happened, and then they made an adjustment in 2002 to the 2000 census, when that happened, corporate America was scrambling, and in a way continues to scramble, to see how it is that they can better serve that community, the Latino community, and make sure that they capture more and more of the dollars that the Latino community spends. And considering that right now, the disposable income of the Latino community is around $670 billion to top $1 trillion by 2010, that corporate America wants to make sure that they do everything possible to get as many of those dollars as they possibly can, which is why they're investing millions and millions of dollars in their marketing campaigns. And every major corporation has something or a variety of things that are focused on the Latino community. As I like to say in my own company, in the role that I play in my company, we're big, we're getting bigger, we're growing faster than any other community in this country, we're not going away, and the general population has to understand that very shortly, 1 out of every 4 people in this country are going to speak Spanish. In an environment such as that, a structured environment that exists in the military, and in particular in the Air Force, because I can only refer to my experience in active duty at that time in the Air Force, there were not that many Latinos to begin with. There just weren't. In fact, there weren't a lot of minorities. So yes, wherever I was stationed, I did always seek out other Latinos that I could associate with, relate to. But I must say that, quite frankly, because I felt so comfortable with who I was and with who I am, I was never hesitant to put myself right in the middle of non-Latino groups or non-Latino settings, because I felt that in the real world, I would have to be a part of that if I wanted to succeed, and I knew that the world was not made up of just Latino people or minorities, but of everybody. And so I guess that subconsciously I made it a point to integrate myself into those other communities and made myself feel comfortable. Whether or not the others felt comfortable, and when I mean the others, I'm talking about people that were not minorities, that was not my concern. My concern was how I felt and how I was able to interact and socialize with those folks. Well, as far as Latinos are concerned in this country, to become what would be considered a professional person, it is something that now, since there are now second generations, third generations, in some cases fourth and fifth generations growing up here, the educational opportunities are greater than they were before. Therefore, the likelihood of being able to pursue a professional career in whatever discipline is greater than it was before. So, and of course, Latinos are very, very supportive. Latino parents are very, very supportive of their children receiving as much of an education as they possibly can. And in many instances, those parents are willing and do make whatever sacrifices they have to make in order for their children to receive the proper education. An education that in many cases the parents couldn't and didn't receive. But they want to make sure that that does not happen to their children. As far as businessmen and the opportunities for owning one's own business and becoming an entrepreneur, that drive, that desire, I am absolutely convinced is inherent in our culture. We love to be the masters of our own destinies. And quite frankly, what better way to be able to do that than to have a business of your own. We have witnessed that here in New York City by the tremendous growth that occurred in the business world, in the small business world, in las bodegas, en las botánicas, en los restaurantes, en las barras, all kinds of different types of businesses that our community gravitated to so that they could be independent, so that they can have that real sense of ownership, so that they could be their own bosses and make whatever sacrifices they had to make sure that they had a better life and that they were able to provide a better life for their children. So the entrepreneurial spirit in this country is very, very much alive among the Latino community, and that is evidenced by the fact that the Latino community is, in the business sector, growing at a faster pace than any other sector of the American population.